Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Those people have just joined again. I apologize for a typical old person mistake. This thing was supposed to be at 10 o'clock. I don't know how on earth I got it right. I booked it at 8 South African time. So there's some people now. I'm sure that there's some people. I'm sure people in the US are just not going to join. I mean, that's obvious because it'll be like midnight or something ridiculous. Anyhow, nice to see you all, and welcome to the chat. I've had two questions in the course of the last week in preparation for this. The one is from my friend Professor Zaki from Riyadh, from Jeddah. Assalamu alaikum, Zainab. How are you, dear?
I'm good. Alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam, Sheikh Sahab. So good to see you.
Likewise, alhamdulillah. So, as I was indicating, we only had two questions, one from Dr. Zaki and the other one from friend of mine in Islamabad. The first question is really concerned with retirement. So, Professor Zaki is now he's finishing, I think, in the next 10 days or very soon, and he he was sort of responding to the das on frailty that I gave a couple of weeks ago, or some time ago, on this idea of realizing that at some point in your life, from this point forward, it is downhill. I mean, you aren't going to recover, and sort of month by month, you can contrast the sort of changes in functionality and mobility and all sorts of things like that. And so I explored that, and he said, could I also explore the issue of retirement? And I must admit, so I had I had two thoughts that kind of, and they sort of occur to me in series. The first is that actually the idea of retirement is a little bit strange. I mean, because I don't think societies prior to ours had this idea. I mean, if you're a peasant in a village, you continue doing what you could do physically, what you could do until you were no longer physically capable of doing that. Yeah, if you're a hunter gatherer, you continue doing like the San people. If you continued hunting and doing what you needed to do to feed the band, and if it got to the point where your mobility inhibited the band, they would just leave you to die. And so basically, work and being alive were absolutely related ideas for most of our condition. So this is really an invention of I think it was Bismarck's invention, the whole idea of a pension, that you get to a point where you then retire, and then either through the auspices of the state or your own private uh, uh, savings, you no longer work, but you live off your pension. And then the question was, so what is the purpose of the rest of your life? And if purpose is for you completely associated with being a significant person in the world and making a contribution to others, then I suspect that retirement is the most distressing prospect. Um, and I actually know that it is because, I mean, in my career, I've seen many people retire over time in various industries, and a lot of people don't deal with that problem eloquently. they And very often they die shortly afterwards because their whole being is so wrapped up in their sense of identity and the sense of significance that goes with the role, that they basically just wither and die if they no longer have that. So so how does one deal with this very unique and modern phenomenon of retirement? Um, you know, is it is it is it is it a foregone conclusion that one is to see this as some sort of a curse? Now, we recently did a program in the Zawiya where we examined and explored the issue of the maturation of attention. And without wanting to repeat, 3 days worth of quite strenuous content, I'd like to put down a couple of key ideas in that framework to sort of make sense of an alternative view of looking at retirement. And this is all really concerned with how we conceive of the distinction between the perceiver and the perceived. So what I'm suggesting is that at the limit of your peripheral vision, there's a boundary. And if you're just working with vision now, at the limit of your peripheral vision, there's a boundary, and that boundary operates like a window frame because it frames everything that you can see, and everything that you see is within that frame, and it presents you with two realms. First of all, there's that which you can see, which is the sort of that side, the other side of perception, and then there's that which is doing the seeing, which is this side of perception, the seer. And all of our experience is pinned between these two elements of an exteriority and an interiority of perception. That side of perception, or the there of perception, and the here of perception. And without that, I don't think you could perceive. I mean, perceiving requires a perceiver and a perceived, that distinction. Now, we have the various ways that one can conceive of or conceptualize the distinction between the here of perception and the there of perception. First of all, one can think that the here of perception is consistent with the idea of self, and the there of perception is consistent with the idea of other. Although it's probably more useful to think of others because it's plural. There's obviously more people in the world than you. So one way of looking at the distinction between the here of perception and the there of perception is that it's consistent with the distinction between self and others. Now, there's a number of rather unnerving implications to experiencing and describing the distinction between the here of perception and the there of perception, the distinction between self and others. First of all, the self is presented with a problem, and that problem is the problem of the one against the many, which is by definition an unnerving prospect. So immediately you get a sense of having to manage, and literally manage that which is potentially overwhelming. And it becomes even more kind of apparent how challenging a prospect this is if you consider the distinction between self and other as the difference between here and there. By just examining what do we mean by self? And what do we mean by others? So if you consider the self, if I asked you to list, a number of attributes, things that you think are true about yourself, it doesn't matter how long the list is. Maybe we arbitrarily say it's a list of 15 things. You write all those things. Well, I'm a man, I'm 65, I'm married, I've 4 children, blah, 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 blah. Things that are true about me and about you could do the same for you. And then, but after you've done the list, the very first question that occurs to me is, well, how do you know that those things are true? And actually, every one of those things are true based on a memory of something that has happened in the past. So my sense of who I am, myself, is completely built based on a biographic account of things that have happened over time. Now, the question is, what was this side of experience? What was this thing that I now refer to as me? What was it before the moment before that event happened? So the moment before, when I went from being nobody's father to being a father. What is so you can see that this thing that is doing the looking isn't quite the same accretion of stuff that we recognize as being ourselves. And the other thing about the secretion of stuff that we recognize as being ourselves is that it's actually also an ongoing kind of framing of limitation. Because if we just look at the things that I said about myself, okay, I'm 65. So my wife Anna helped me to understand this. It was very helpful, actually. So if I'm 65, it means that there's a box of human beings who are 65, and I'm in that box, and everybody who's not 65 is outside of that box. So it's quite a restricted sort of number of people that you're dealing with here. So and then if I say I'm a 65 and I'm a father of four, so how many 65-year-olds are a father of four? And how many 65-year-olds that are a parent of four are males? And so you go find and so eventually, if you have like 10 things and you impose a hierarchy on those 10 things, you start realizing that these 10 things are sort of, they're like boxes within boxes within boxes. And each one of the boxes you put yourself in is a further statement of exclusion. And that exclusion also then produces your sense of lack, because it's negation, it's separate. And it creates your neediness. And it creates the necessity to engage the world to get the things that you want. I mean, if I'm a father of four, well, I need to provide for them. So then I need to get into the world to get the stuff to provide for my kids. So that our biography, our idea of us, of this side of perception being a self, is it's a description of limitation, it's a description of conditioning, and is therefore a description of conditional motive. It is what I need to do to get from the world what I want. So that's already quite a disturbing kind of an experience. And it creates a sense of victimhood. Because the overall rule here is that if you want something from somebody else, that person's ability to withhold what you want gives them power over you. So if I'm trying to get stuff from the world, the thing that I'm getting is not in my hands, it's in the hands of other, which means other has control over me. I'm under thumb, which means to say, when I conceive of this side of perception as a self, this is a needy thing, a thing that has to constantly be negotiating in the outward, in the what you could call the arena of the perceived, to get the things that I want. The complexity doesn't end there, though, because I'm also dealing with others. And if you think about others, well, who are the others? Well, I guess in extremity, you could say it's every one of the 8 billion odd human beings on the planet. But clearly they're not the same in order. So it's the others sort of radiate out from you in sort of like proximity of relation, from the closest to you, which is like your spouse or your children or whatever, your immediate family, and then maybe your friends and acquaintances, and so until you're dealing with somebody who's just a stranger on the train. So that and what's interesting is that the closer people get to you, the more legitimate expectations they have of you. I mean, quite legitimate. I mean, like if I'm a father, I should provide, and et cetera, et cetera. So, and it's not just with one person; it's like with lots of people. So conceiving myself of myself as a self, that this side of perception is a person with an identity that is dealing with other people, not only makes me weak in having to get stuff from others, but makes me having to mince through my life, constantly trying to juggle other people's expectations of me. This is an unspeakably horrifying prospect. Is there a different way of conceiving of the distinction between the here of perception and the there of perception, the this side and the that side of experience, other than referring to it as the distinction between the self and the other? And there is. Experiment, for example, of considering this distinction between this side of perception and that side of perception as the difference between the seer and the seen. Well, that's quite quite significant. I mean, first of all, so well, let's have a look at the 15 or so attributes that you had that you thought that were true about you. Every one of those things, are they an object? Are they something that you can see? And yes, they are. So I mean, I can literally, I mean, if I can, even my name, something as personal as my name, I can write it down. I can see, I can use it as an object. Now the thing is that the thing that is seen is not the thing that's doing the seeing. That anything that is seen is on that side of experience. The seeing is on this side of experience. So that's really significant. It means that this thing that's doing the seeing is none of those things that I associate with myself. You know, it is like the things that I associate with myself are all, they're like parts of it. They're elements of a mask that I literally wear. It's a persona. But the thing that's doing the seeing can see every one of those things. It's almost like looking at the mask from behind the mask. So if you conceive of yourself as a seer, you allow yourself to fall a little bit further back into this side of experience to explore and experience what is really here, to explore what this thing that is looking really is. And this thing that is looking is not a person. It is not a self. It is certainly, it is not a self among others. It looks through a self and deals with others, but it is not the self. So that's a very big mouthful, and I hope I kind of at some level makes sense. But so I want to come back to Professor Zaka's question about retirement. When you retire, I mean, it's for most of us, the principal realm of contention, the principal realm where we have to appear in the world as a self, negotiating our way through with others in order to produce outcomes that are beneficial to the common good and to ourselves, is at work. And what are they saying to you when you retire? We no longer have any use for you. That's fantastic. It gives you an opportunity to get out of the drama. It gives you an opportunity to do the work that really matters, which is the kind of work that's concerned with allowing you to operate from a place which is deeper in yourself. You can step further and further back into yourself and recognize that the thing that's doing the experiencing is not the person. It is a seer, which is like behind the mask. So what retirement affords you to do is it affords you the opportunity to step out of the realm of the perceived, of being one who's part of the world, looking in on the world. So as far as that's concerned, it is the most golden opportunity. And even more amazingly, society as we have it now funded for you. They literally give you the money that you can sit and gaze your navel. That's fantastic. So this horror of aging that we have in our society, I mean, I hear it in Sweden all the time, and I find it quite extraordinary. They say, what do they say? They say 50 is the new 40. 60 is the new 50. I mean, why? What is this horror of becoming old and useless? Becoming old and useless is the most fantastic station a human being can occupy, particularly if your society allows you to sit back and be useless. I mean, I don't think this is something to be lamented at all. I think it's something to be celebrated. Bless this society, no matter how sick and corrupt it is, for having produced the status called retirement. Because in the status of retirement, you can start doing the work that really matters, which is the inner work, which actually does produce contentment. And it does produce all the things that you thought you were going to achieve by chasing them down in the world. I'll be happy once I have X million dollars. I'll be happy once I have this position. I'll be happy once I have that spouse, that car, that, and you discover, just like a greyhound chasing down, one of those sort of plastic rabbits or the rubber rabbits that they chase around the ground track. You catch it, that's not a rabbit. It's nothing. This is like a big cheat. And that's what they do to you. They keep you engaged as a self in this kind of theater of the perceived, thinking that you will be happy when you get the things that they dangle in front of you. And if surely by the age of 50, you must have realized that every one of those things are false. Every one of those things are not what they purport to be. Just like when that poor greyhound finally catches this thing it's been chasing around the track and it realizes, but this is not a rabbit. That's how we are. It's a tragedy. So don't wish not to age. Don't wish not to become useless. Don't wish to not retire. I mean, because it's a different thing if you kind of, if you haven't sort of really provided enough for your dotage and you now really have to do some work. I mean, that's a different matter. But I don't think that this thing of retirement that we see in our current society is at all a curse. It's an opportunity to do real inner work, real reflective work, disengage from the world, discover who you really are. In fact, I'm going to rephrase this because we're all trying to understand who am I? This is a nonsense question, because as soon as you just speak about this side of experience as a who, then there's a person associated with that. But this side of experience is not a person. It's something that sees. So don't be interested in who you are. Be interested in what you are. What is this thing that's looking through your eyes? That's looking out this extraordinary spectacle that you've been created to be delighted in. And you'll discover that if you spend some time in that spaciousness, which is this side of experience, that you are a tiny particle of an immense oneness, which is his nature, designed to look back at itself. You're a part of the universe, designed to look back at the universe and be amazed and be in love, because it's extraordinary. So that was the one question, folks. That was the question from Dr. Zaki. And then I had another question from somebody that I won't name the person, but and you'll understand in a moment why. Although she was expressing something which I'm finding distressingly common, actually. I mean, in my experience doing this work, over the years, a lot of people have suffered sexual abuse as children, and a lot of, and this is both boys and girls. This is not gender sensitive in terms of my experience. So people have told me about these horror show experiences that they've had. Now, and what is apparent in every one of these cases, that this thing of sexual abuse is deeply injuring. It's deeply damaging. It hurts people in a way that they struggle their entire lives, and they never really seem to be able to sort of put down that beast, that monster. So what I'm going to say, I need you to consider from 2 points of view. So first, I want to look at the whole phenomenon of child abuse, and particularly sexual abuse of children, looking at it from the outside. And this is clearly a horror. It is clearly something that is deeply and unspeakably repulsive, and destroys people, damages people in the most unspeakable ways. And must be, any sane society must repress it, it cannot be allowed to happen. It's just wrong. It's just bad. So as a phenomenon in the world, it has to be judged and not just disapproved of, but uh, you know, made war on. But then there's another issue of this, and that is not looking at the phenomenon over there, but looking at it, the interiority of the problem. If you yourself have had this problem or you've had similar problems, how do I deal with having been abused as a child? Am I, how long do I need to carry this broken child with me? Um, uh, is that brokenness who I am? Now, the discussion we've just had a moment before relating to this issue of the seer and the persona, that they're actually different. This is helpful here. It is only a person who can suffer. The seer cannot suffer. In fact, you very often hear this in accounts of sexual abuse, particularly of children, is that while it's happening to them, it is like it's happening to somebody else. They remove themselves from the scene. And you can also see people have been through great horror, like a horrendous accident or whatever. There's a point where they see themselves going through the thing. It's like it's not happening to them. It's happening to their body. It's happening to, No, that's not just a survival skill. That's actually there's a key in there. No matter what gets done to you, you are not the experience. You're always on this side of the experience, no matter how awful that experience is. You're always the one looking, the experience is always there. It's never here. Which means to say that any attribute of abuse that we experience, we can also then start doing the work of liberating the here of perception from assuming that that thing is who I am, is what I am. It's like, this is a poor metaphor, but it may be useful to you. I wasn't always called Ibrahim. My birth name is Etzko. I was given the name Ebrahim. Well, actually, I chose the name Ibrahim when I was 21 years old when I became Muslim. So what happened to me then? I mean, it's like, what happened to the old? Now, I've been very sneaky, and that is, I maintain both identities for purely manipulative purposes. I completely admit to that. But I have both identities. The one I use mainly professionally, the other one I use mainly personally, but I have these two identities. But I could have chosen at some point to sort of put the one in a box and choose the other one. I could have said, no, Etzko is dead. This is now Ibrahim, which means to say that my name is like a suit that I take out of that I can take out of the cupboard and put on. Anything that is of you biographically is something that you can choose to put on or take off. Even if it has a feel of complete compulsion about it, if you called me Fred and I'm immensely outraged at being called Fred, I mean, that feels like, no, I have the sense of revulsion. That's not me. I am Ibrahim, well, okay. But maybe I can, maybe it's possible that in another universe I am Fred. I was kind of like, I can choose the word as a jacket. Just like I can choose Ibrahim as a jacket. And I did at one point choose Ibrahim as a jacket. The word, the Etzko was a jacket they put on me. But, as soon as I became conscious enough, I could choose another name. I could take it off, put on another one. And so it is with anything that is true for us in our biographic account, is that we can choose to see it as an object, like any other object, that we can choose to put on or take off and slough off. Now, if it has this immense force of compulsion about it, that work is not easy to do. because you're dealing with a parasitic program that is so deeply entwined itself in your inner experience that you're completely convinced that the parasite is you, or that the parasite is the seer, the one who's doing the looking. So it might take a little bit of work to kind of extricate yourself from all the tendrils of this parasite that's stuck in your being, and particularly if the events if they were repeated events, then this thing gets iterated and sort of gets rammed into your conviction that that this is who I am. You know? So I do think that the overall the overall project of any inner work, which is to move deeper within this side of experience, the spaciousness of this side of experience, and no longer confuse that which is doing the seeing with the person, with the self. That's the same medicine for any of these ailments, for any of these heart-wrenching kind of biographic accounts that we carry in our suitcase and then sort of consider ourselves to be. Anything that you can put in your biography is an object. It is not the thing that's doing the looking. It's not the subject. You can therefore choose to distantiate yourself from it. Now, you might do that deliberately and consciously, and the moment you look away, it sneaks up from behind because it's actually held in what we would call waswas, the whispering within. Doesn't matter. The moment you realize it surfaced again, you go back into the work, you say, that thing is not the thing that's looking. That thing is not me. That thing is an event. It's happened, it's gone, it's past. It's not the thing that's doing the looking. You can do that, you iterate that frequently enough, and I think incrementally you can escape. I mean, our project in this, our project, the project of Tasawwuf, is to escape your biography. This is a generalized project. It just has a feel of immediate kind of compulsive sort of need and necessity for the person who's had a horrendous biography that might have carried some abuse in it. Those were the two questions that came forward, folks. So we've still got another 20 minutes or so. I'll have a look if anybody wants to say anything on the chat. Right. So Peter said, thank you for the invitation to this meeting. I'm grateful. I would be interested to hear your thoughts regarding the choices to be made to be in the company of fellow Muslims. As someone whose wife and family are not Muslims, I often wonder how, beyond the online gatherings, I might pursue surrounding myself with the right people as recommended, particularly the role of relocation. So, Peter, I'm sure you can see me squirming in my chair here because I clearly don't know enough about your biographic situation. So, I'd be a fool to sort of start making pronouncements about what I think you should do. I think the essential problem we face is that I'm self confronted by others. It actually doesn't matter if the others are called Miriam or Mary. The fundamental problem is exactly the same. They have demands on you, and they will make demands on you. Now, obviously, it's far more convenient if I'm a Muslim that she's a Miriam and not a Mary, because then at least we might sometimes pray together, and we have more reasons to kind of collaborate. But it doesn't change the fundamental nature of the problem. The fundamental nature of the problem is not one that can be solved by companionship, because companionship is the problem. It is you to discover who you really are. No, let me rephrase that. To discover what you really are means spending enough time in solitude, withdrawing your being from engagement with people so that you can find the depth within. So the essence of the work does not require a change of context insofar as you need different kinds of people around you. You know, in fact, in my experience, if you do start doing you start doing inner work, you're doing your salah, you're doing all this, and you're starting to transform as a being, the people around you become curious. And when they become curious, then they start to want to emulate you. And in other words, they become Muslim. And this has been my own personal experience. The people around me when I became Muslim were not Muslims. But now I live among Muslims, partly because, I made mates who were Muslim, but also partly because the people around me became Muslim. So, yeah. And so in order to just a final thing about this, Peter, and again, please excuse me because I really don't understand your context. And we can have an online discussion, separate, like a call if you want, so that I can understand better. But wherever you are, there must be Muslims near you that you can start keeping company with. If they are, so you don't just have to do this online, and you can maybe build a network of people incrementally. But I don't think that's I don't think it's necessary. In fact, I know people who've actually become Muslim and have flown completely under the radar, completely under the radar, and it works for them. They do their practice. They have inner development, inner growth, and they view their deen as an absolutely private affair. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. They don't. And very often, when I come across people say, yeah, I really like what you're saying. I would love to become Muslim, but the problem is, I live in my family or Christians and so on. I say, well, do the minimum and fly under the radar. It's not what you're doing is not their affair. Don't make it their affair. And then you'll see that Allah will change your condition, inshallah.
Inshallah, thank you.
Pleasure. If I may ask, please, where are you?
Well, I move around a lot. Right now, I'm in Delhi. So, as you say, I have got plenty of access to Muslim communities. The problem I have with that is that I don't speak Urdu or Hindi, and so I'm more connected with Yusuf, who you know, his community.
Right.
And I was originally introduced through the Naqshbandis. But what you were saying in particular about the solitude is very helpful, because what's brought this up for me is a sort of focus on the importance of engagement with communities as a Muslim, and that just being a recluse is not really the way. That's been the subject of discussion. So I'm by nature quite a reclusive person and happy with that. But I also have certainly experienced the benefits of being held amongst sort of people.
Right.
They don't have to be Muslims, but they have to be sort of Sikhs or something.
Yeah. So, my own view, Peter, is that you don't require. This is not about other. Fundamentally, this is about you and your Rabb. This is not about you and other people. And so there's, if you're in a context where being a bit of a recluse is actually how you operate, and that's fine. Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Marvelous.
So there's a Riyaz Sahab. So nice to see you. So what I just spoke of the abusive, about the abuse is something that is not affecting the seer directly, as an object that is almost detached. How does the same principle apply to the joys one experiences, particularly the joy of experience? Yes. So you see, that's why we have these very intelligent people here that ask these seemingly, but I think so. So if you consider the word savoring, I think the real pleasure, the real joy of an experience is in the savoring of it. And savoring means that you're giving the experience attention. So I mean, how often? So coffee is a wonderful example because so many of us are coffee addicts. And if you're a coffee addict, the kind of it is the hit, that hit of caffeine in your bloodstream with the first cup of coffee in the morning. That's kind of what it's all about. And it's you don't really savor the coffee, you're drinking it for the hit. However, if somebody comes to you and says, I've got this really extraordinary coffee, it comes from I don't know, some really obscure place. They kind of it's a single kind of harvest crop. It's a very tiny estate high on a mountain, and it produces it like you've never tasted before. And I make you that cup of coffee. You would not drink that cup of coffee purely for the caffeine hit, because you're now alert to this thing. But hold on, this isn't just an ordinary cup of coffee. This is something special. Every single mouthful would get rolled around your mouth, would be smelled, would be, you allow the coffee to sort of sink into the back here, past your saliva glands, and you'd keep it in your mouth, and you keep the aroma in your nose, and then you would allow it to sink. That's a different way of drinking coffee. But that means you are not, your attention, you think of it as a place that your attention is operating. So if I'm drinking the coffee just to get the caffeine hit, I'm sort of giving that this is sort of behind what's getting the attention. I'm always doing it unconsciously. I haven't quite woken up yet, and the coffee's already been drunk. But if I'm drinking the coffee to drink the coffee, it means I have to stand at a place which is deeper than the coffee itself, so I can really give attention to the experience. So this thing of standing away from the experience to give it good attention and not to be overwhelmed by it is true for both terrible experience and for wonderful experience. And in fact, it's only when you do that that wonderful experience really unlocks for you. You can do exactly the same thing with your attention, sitting in a dentist's chair. And let's hype this thing. So you have one of those conditions where you can't take anesthetic, and this guy's got to do something on your root canal. So you can imagine just the horror of this. You can do exactly the same thing with your attention in that extreme pain as you can do deliberately savoring a cup of coffee. You can stand back and not allow the experience to overwhelm you, but stand back and watch the experience. The moment you do that, you can handle anything. You can handle somebody cutting your foot off because you're this side of experience. So the same rule of attention is true for both awful experience and wonderful experience. The thing only unlocks its nature when you allow it to be there, be experienced, be that which is experienced, and you allow the experiencer to be here. Right. What is the best focus attention while fasting? Look, I mean, I think it's the same rule, I think, that while you're fasting, the discomfort that you experience is not the one who's experiencing. And you can give attention to the discomfort of the experience, like you can give attention to the release from the discomfort with that first glass of water. Just fasting, if anything, helps you to give attention to what's actually going on, because you're in an experience which is, I beg your pardon, sort of overwhelming. Right. I think that's everything in the chat boxes. Thank you very much, folks. If there's nothing else, then we'll move on. Thank you very much, and again, great gratitude to Mahbub Saab for being so persistent and reminding me, listen, you've got to do another one of these things, because I sort of forget. Well, thank you very much, Mahbub. I'm grateful to you. And please excuse me again that anybody from the UK has had to get up in the middle of the night for this. I'll try and do it better next time. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Sheikh.
There was a thing in the chats. Yeah, can we do one in Ramadan? We'll do one in Ramadan, inshallah. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much, Sheikh sir. Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.